Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. In this update, we are tracking two storm systems. One that is highlighted over the southern plains now that will be moving into the southeast with very heavy rainfall. Now, all eyes will turn it back into the west coast where they're expecting an even stronger system than the first one they saw. And that is the system that is expected to bring a lot of flooding rains to especially those areas in Southern California. So I appreciate all my subscribers. If you are new here, I'm here on a daily basis putting out a lot of content to keep you well ahead of the storm. So hit the subscribe button and follow along throughout 2024. So let's take a look at the overall setup. You can kind of really depict it here, for the next 5 days, because this overall pattern is really not going to go anywhere with this ridge of high pressure really locked over the top in southern Canada, back through the upper Great Lakes, into the upper Midwest, down through the mid-Atlantic and those areas into the Northeast. A lot of dry air and the atmosphere is really shut off, but it's underneath is the concern is with the more active subtropical jet stream. And this is kind of just a conveyor belt of precipitation that's coming off this more active, El Nino type setup event. And that's the concern with this, relentless amount of moisture going to be impacting the same areas that could bring some extensive flooding to those areas, especially into the southeast. But this is where predominantly most of the instability is going to be, especially over the next 5-day time frame. And it's really the jet stream. It's following that same course. You got the ridging over the top. And here's the concern with the jet stream. Look at that abundance amount of moisture it's pummeling into portions of Southern California, those areas across Santa Barbara into Los Angeles, down to Oxnard, all those areas into San Diego, definitely be on high alert. Some of those areas within the Los Angeles County area could pick up 6 to 12 inches of rainfall, and even some of the mountain regions, the National Weather Service was hinting at around 15 inches could fall in the coming days, mainly from that Sunday through that Tuesday time frame. And that's going to bring some heavier snows, especially to the higher elevations and getting into good part of Colorado. Even those areas into Denver and Colorado Springs are going to get in the action. That's going to be diving south through the southern plains and then into the southeast as well. They also include some heavier rains, not as significant as they're going to see across the west coast, but still those areas across Louisiana where they've took a major dent in the exceptional drought over the last month or two, they're going to take even more of a dent with more heavy rain that's coming your way into that weekend time frame. So overall, here's the setup on the temperature anomalies. We're coming out, a big thaw or fall spring or whatever you want to call it. It's a warm up right now. We are still in the middle of the winter. Groundhog Day was just yesterday, right? So this is, most of the country is seeing that ridge of high pressure that's well above average temperature anomalies unfolding across a good part of, the upper Great Lakes here. But see, all eyes attention to Alaska, because they were like brutally cold for an extended period of time, but you can see some warmer anomalies slowly start to filtering in. And that's the overall progression process of this slowly changing, this originating out west. And eventually this will be a step process heading out, towards the central and eastern 2/3 of the state, once we get closer to that middle of February. But between now and then, we got a lot of rainfall to contend with, especially around that southern flank. So there's the concern. Some of these, even the Blenda models is still printing out a foot of rain across some of these areas. So yeah, definitely be on high alert, especially with that Sunday, Monday, Tuesday time frame there in central and southern California. But even across the Nevada and even through Arizona, you're looking at some pretty heavy rain even for you guys. And that's going to move through the Four Corners region. And then, of course, we'll have that secondary piece of energy that's highlighted over the southeast will impact those areas. And then you have the dry slot over the top, under that ridge of high pressure. But here's the setup for Colorado. It depends on how fast this system can be. But no question, the mountain regions are going to get clocked with very heavy snow. you know, depending on the speed of this, it could slow down. If and it does do that, the National Weather Service is definitely hinting at more of a progression back towards the Colorado Springs region, back into the Denver region. So yeah, there is a little bit of uncertainty even right now as far as if it is going to have some of that upslope even into the Denver region and back into the Colorado Springs region. But I do feel it's going to be slow enough. It's going to be tapping into that energy, and the GFS the GFS is definitely hinting at it. It's a little bit more bullish. I don't think we get this amount of snow back into those Denver regions, but we are still looking at for some heavier snows, especially in the Sierras. Just get clocked with 4, 5, 6, even upwards of maybe 7-foot totals. And that's not even exaggerating, folks. I mean, that's very heavy, extensive, heavy snow, extreme winter impacts event, you know, up across these mountain regions through the Sierras. But the heavier snows are mainly predominant out west, because that's where any colder air is. I mean, it's plenty warm across the central and eastern 2/3 of the U.S. But one thing we notice going forward is there's just the abundance amount of precipitation that's going to be available. I mean, this is your vertical velocity index. This is the upward lift. So when you see these areas out in the Pacific, for example, that's highlighted over orange and these yellow shaded areas, that's drier conditions. It's sinking air is what you have. And so once you get into the blue, the kind of the green and more bluish colors, yeah, that's a little bit more upward rising motion air. And the darker the color, the more upward rising motion air. So if air rises, has obviously a greater opportunity to squeeze out some of that precipitation in the atmosphere. And that's likely going to happen for a good part of the lower 48 through that 7th and that 12th time frame of February. And if we extend the view, that just continues. I mean, it's the El Nino in full effect. So it definitely appears, even in the extended range, that a good part of the U.S. is still predominantly stays on the wet side. But as some of that colder air will finally start to take over out west, and the jet stream shifts a little bit, that's going to pull those areas across the central and getting back into the Ohio Valley, into the central, into the northeastern portions of the U.S. with some rainfall. So you're still going to have the subtropical jet. I mean, this is highlighted from the Climate Prediction Center through that mid-month time frame. So the subtropical jet stream still alive and well, but as the colder air will start to influx into our western regions, that is going to buckle the jet stream just a tad bit and elongate those areas further off to the central and eastern 2/3 to finally slowly try to break down that ridge and then pull some of that precipitation back into those regions. Now, here's the update from the 8 to 14 from the Climate Prediction Center. You know, so this is from that 9th through the 15th, and this is more likely about I would say more like the 12th time frame. It's really going to be, you know, those areas between all the way up through the 12th. So you're still plenty warm, plenty above average temperatures. I mean, really for the next 9 days or so. But we are going to be seeing some changes in the longer term, as finally some of that colder air will really start to take over across our western regions. And then the ridging of high pressure will slowly start to erode. And as this colder air comes in, you got the jet stream buckling a little bit. So it's still alive and well. It's still pretty prevalent with this more active subtropical jet. So those same areas are still going to get some of those heavier rainfall and more or less being the bullseye. But with this buckling and that some of that colder air allowed to travel down further south across our western regions, that's going to put the placement of this jet stream and shoot it northeast. So yes, finally those areas across the Ohio Valley and eventually heading into the northeast will get back into the action for precipitation. So here's the latest update in the ensembles. And like I mentioned, it's likely about the 12th time frame. Most ensembles are printing out this type of scenario, as the darker reds are not as dark anymore. So the ridging starts to slowly kind of lose its grip as most of the fuel, the heat, pulls back up into Canada over Greenland and over Alaska again, allows that colder air to come trapped and get pulled underneath. So once it does, then the colder air will be able to kind of take over. So here's the Canadian ensembles, you know, kind of implying the same thing. right around that 12th time frame. So definitely enjoy the warmer weather while you have it, but we are in the middle of winter still, and I do feel the colder air will be coming back, but it's more likely not until that Valentine's or the mid-month time frame, as the colder air will finally start to intrude all the way down into our southwestern regions. But once it does that, it's going to be able to finally start to erode that ridging. And here's the Lettuce Ensemble print on some of the guidance going forward, right around that 14th, 15th time frame. Can't tell you exactly how cold it's going to be, but it's going to feel like a lot more like February than it's what it's feeling like right now, like April. So there are going to be changes on the table in the extended range. And if you're looking for, some colder anomalies and some more activity back out toward our central and eastern 2/3, you're gonna have to wait a little bit longer as that ridge, slowly starts to erode, over the next week or so. So guys, I appreciate you guys following. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update while I protect you before and after the storm.